Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Your Happiness Equation, no other than Mr. Leighton Campbell. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Lighton, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. So thank you, Daniel, for the opportunity to be on. So this is my second book, actually, and again, the title is Your Happiness Equation. And the idea of the book is to give readers concepts to help them improve their happiness. And what I developed in order to help them do that in an easy way to interact with this information is I created an equation where you can answer 7 questions and get a happiness score on a 0 to 100 point scale. And that's the premise of the book.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Lighton, and thank you so much for sharing your books to the world. So tell us your happiness equation all about.
Okay. So the idea of the book came out of a conversation that I had with my children. This was during COVID, where they were separated from their friends, their extended family. And during that conversation, I wanted to give them ideas about happiness, but not give them a lecture at the same time. So I said, "Hey guys, why don't we see if we can come up with an equation to measure happiness?" And they were like, "Okay, cool, let's do it." So they started throwing out ideas. I was writing down some of the ideas and coaching the conversation. And at the end of that process, I look at what I have written down, and I felt that there was really something impactful there. I wasn't really sure, but I felt like I wanted to do something a little more with it. So at that time in my life, I was and still am a member of a business networking group. And in this group with about 40 other business professionals, I was the educational coordinator. And that means that every week I was responsible for bringing a topic to the group and help them either with business, with life, with various resources. I got about 4 minutes to um, present this idea to the group. So I took the idea of your happiness equation that I started with my children. I did a little bit more reading and research over that week period. Then I presented it to my business networking group, and I was absolutely blown away by the response that I got from them. Almost everyone in the group either called me, texted me, emailed me, came up to me afterward and said that was so impactful. They started opening up to me, sharing personal things that have happened to them and how these ideas really resonated with them. And then after that, I was like, yes, I really feel I have an obligation to get these ideas out and see if I can help other people with it. So that is kind of the origin story of the book.
So, Mr. Lighton, what does the book define happiness in the context of modern life?
Sure. So in the book, I make it a point to separate the happiness that I'm referring to, and I'll define for you in a moment, from the emotional state of happiness. And the reason why I do that is because the emotional state of happiness can be fleeting. You may feel happy in one moment, and then the very next moment, something can happen that will make you feel sad or depressed or angry. So that emotion of happiness can be very problematic to try and search for it, to reach for it, to strive for it, because you're striving for something that is not permanent. So in the book, what I encourage readers to do is I encourage them to build structures in their life that have the capacity to produce happiness. So you're not chasing the emotion, you're you're putting in the hard work, you're being intentional to build structures in your life that have the capacity to produce the byproduct of happiness. And as we go further in this conversation, you'll see how that's done. But some of the examples are building relationships with people, meaningful relationships with people. Um, that is something that I believe we were hardwired to do. I believe it's part of our genetic makeup to be in community with other people. And if you can be intentional about that, those relationships that you develop can produce that long-term, long-lasting feeling of happiness, as an example. There are many others, but that is an example.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Lightham. And what role does mindset play in achieving happiness?
Mindset is everything in everything almost, and definitely in happiness and uh, pursuing and maintaining happiness. Mindfulness is very important because I would think I believe that the beginning of mindfulness is awareness. It is hard to know that you're doing the right thing, doing the wrong thing, that something is lacking, that you're overdoing something, if you are not first aware of that issue. So to be aware of something implies that you are mentally thinking about it and you have brought it to your consciousness. So the first thing that I would say is that um, it is okay to want to be happy. That is not a selfish thing. That is not a selfish pursuit. To the contrary, it is a moral obligation to other people that you are around and to yourself to be happy. And that concept is not original to me. I got that from a book I read many years ago called um, Happiness is a Serious Problem by Dennis Prager. And in that book, he he lays that concept out, and it was profound to me. And in the book, he says, having a bad attitude and walking through life with a bad attitude, it's similar to not brushing your teeth in the morning, not wearing deodorant, and you just have a bad aura about yourself, and you're just interacting with other people, not being conscious of how your actions are affecting them. So you have a moral obligation to be happy. At the same time, um, I'm not saying, and I don't encourage, and he didn't either. You need to have people in your life that you can be real with, and you can tell them, "I am really upset about this," or "This particular issue I'm really struggling with it, and I'm telling you because you're my friend or you're my spouse or whatever the case may be. You're my clergy member. I'm telling you this. I have to get this off my chest," and so on. That is good. You can be very real with them. You can be very negative with them and really express yourself to them so that they have a real understanding of where you're coming from. But I don't think it is immoral to go to the supermarket and the person who is checking you out to be mean to them because you're having problems in your own life. That's wrong. And you can't do that and should not do that. That's immoral to do that. The moral thing to do is to be as nice and as friendly and put on the display of happiness with the people that you interact with as you go through your life.
Certainly. So, Mr. Lighton, let's talk about the key principles and strategy of your happiness equation. So, what are the key factors that contribute to a person's happiness according to your book?
Sure. So there's 7 questions, and those 7 questions correlate to the 7 variables that are in the equation. And the very first question is, are your basic human needs being met? And I feel based off of research specifically from Abraham Maslow and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Before you go on to try and pursue happiness, it is ideal, it is recommended, it is necessary to make sure that your basic human needs are being met: food, water, shelter, security. If you don't have that, you really shouldn't be putting your efforts into trying to be happy. Get that taken care of first, and then you can proceed to pursue other things like happiness. Um, the second questions is, do you belong to any groups that meet regularly and are meaningful to you? So that talks about the community aspect that we mentioned earlier. The third question is, on an A plus to F scale, how would you rate the value that you bring to those groups? Now, I've been talking to people all over the world, and I know not everybody knows or uses the letter grade system that's used in the American school system. So when you go onto my website and you are trying to figure out where you fall on that scale, I break everything down into the categories of excellent, above average, average, below average, and unsatisfactory. And then within each of those categories, there is a high, middle, and base level. So even if you know nothing about the American school system, you can still choose where you fall, so that way you can get an answer to put into the equation. Um, the fourth question is, on an A plus to F scale, how would you rate your gratitude in life? The fifth question is, when a meaningful situation doesn't go as expected, negative impact on your emotions lasts. And then you have three options: a short time, a moderate time, or a long time. And then the sixth question is, do you believe your life has a purpose? And the seventh and final question is, on an A plus to F scale, how would you rate your progress to achieving your purpose in life? And those are the variables that make up the equation.
Certainly. A great equation, Mr. Lighton. Very excellent. So, what practical steps does the book recommend for increasing happiness in everyday life?
Yeah, so in the book, each chapter, each variable has its own chapter. And in each chapter, I give ideas on how to optimize that particular variable. We talked about having meaningful connections and so on, but one of the things that I talk about in the foundational chapter of the book is that it is important to have to think of something good that came out of a negative situation that you went through in life. And the reason why that is important is because if you don't do that, you're going to see your life as a series of bad things that happen to you. You know, it's just when I was born, this happened and it was negative, and then this happened and it was negative, and you just go through your life and it's just negative after negative. Where I have been through a lot in my life. Most people have been through challenges, some extremely difficult, and I have been through my share of difficult challenges. But what I've done is I've tried to find the positive, at least one thing positive that I can think back on all of the challenges that I've been through. So that way, when I think about it, it's not only just the negative. I think of the good thing that came out of it. For example, um, I went through, I'm divorced and remarried, but my divorce initially, um, with my first wife, we had three children, and I tried to be the best father that I could to my children. And I read to them before they were born, while they were still in their mom's belly, and when they came out, I read to them like constantly. especially at night. So it was very difficult. It was the hardest part of the whole divorce ordeal was to go from 100% access to my children to 50% access. It was a difficult time. But what I decided was, if I'm only going to have 50% access to my children, I'm going to make that 50% count. I'm going to make sure that when we are together, we're doing things that are going to be memorable, that are meaningful, and and so on. So what I did is every summer that I had them, and sometimes it happened during the winter because we took different trips, but we would go on epic adventures. We would drive across the country. One time, my son, he saw a picture of a car driving through a tree, and he said, "Dad, is that true? Can you really drive a car through a tree?" I was like, "Yeah, I think a redwood is big enough. You could probably drive a car through that." He was like, "Wow, that would be really cool to see." So I said to him, "Do you want to go and see it?" He said, "Yeah, I'd love to see it." So that summer, I took him and his brother and sister, and we drove from Miami all the way up to Northern California. And then we went on into Washington, and we went to that very place, and we drove a car through a tree. And we did many epic trips beyond that. And the unfortunate reality is, had I not gotten divorced, I probably wouldn't have done these kind of extreme experiences with my children because I, as much as of a good father as I thought I was, and I tried to be, and I was, but there's always there's always another level, and this opportunity helped me to take that other level. So when I go back and I think of, yeah, I went through a divorce and it was a really hard time, but I have these memories with my children that I probably would not have had that have impacted me very deeply, have impacted them very deeply, and we laugh and think about it all the time. So that's an example of you have to find the good in the bad things that have happened to you so you have a positive, again, going back to your question about mentality, you have a positive association with the negative things that have happened in your life.
Yes, people, it happened for a reason. So, what would be your advice for those people out there to maintain their happiness every day?
Yeah, that's a very good point. A good question. And a lot of people feel like happiness is something that happens to them. Like either you are just happy, or when things are good, or when things are bad, you're not going to be happy, and you just go through life where external factors are going to affect your happiness. When the reality of it is you have a great amount of agency to decide to be happy. However, happiness is not a destination that you arrive at and you just stay there forever. It requires work. There's a quote that I love. It's about success, but you'll see the correlation in a second. And it says, uh, "Success is never owned; it is only rented, and the rent is due every day." And the same thing is true with happiness. You can't just do a couple things this week and think that that's going to be enough to maintain your happiness for the rest of the month or the rest of your life. It is something that you constantly have to work on, constantly be aware of. And that may seem daunting to some people, uh, but it's actually great. And the reason why it's great is because it is something that you have the power to control. And it's not
Certainly.
something that is just going to be forced on you from an external standpoint. Also, part of your happiness plan and your journey is that there are, for sure, if you live long enough, you are going to experience tragic things, and you need to prepare for them. And that's part of the constant work that it requires to be happy because, again, we have a moral obligation to be happy. So when these very difficult things happen, We need to get through them, and that might be hard, but we have the obligation to get back to a state of happiness.
Certainly. So thank you for your advice. So what would be your short-term and long-term goals in writing, Mr. Lighton?
In terms of writing,
Yes.
okay, my first goal is to get the word out about this book to as many people as possible. I really feel it can help people. Um, we launched on February 4th, and I'm getting word back from people who have read the book, and they're telling me stories of how it has helped them. So that's awesome, and I really love that, and I'd love to do that on a much bigger scale. So if your listeners are listening to this and they like what they've heard, I encourage you to buy the book. If you think it can help someone in your life, and buy the book for them and give it to them. Uh, I'm really trying to help as many people as possible. Um, and the book it's not an expensive book. It's 11.99 right now on Amazon. So it's not like I'm making a ton of money on any of this. I really want to help people, and so that's the first goal, is to help as many people as possible. Kind of an intermediate goal would be, I mean, I've already become an Amazon best-selling author, so that has been great. I am looking to, um, God willing, become a New York Times best-selling author. So I need a lot of help and people to help with the project as much as possible. So that would be kind of a midterm goal. And then a long-term goal is, I have many books that I'd like to write. And the more success I can have with this project, again, it would help people, but it would also potentially open more doors for me, and give me access to bigger platforms, bigger opportunities, so that I can make a bigger impact with my work.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Lighton, and looking forward for more empowering books like this. So what role does personal growth and development play in one's happiness equation?
Well, it's all about personal growth. Um, the thing that I believe is that if you're not growing, you're dying in a way, you know. Um, so in order to even maintain the status of where you are, like if you are in a good place in your life right now, in order just to maintain it, you need to work to gather the right information to continue just to stay in that place. But if you want to go to a better place, then it is even more important to get resources, to get information, to get content that's going to help you do that. And I feel that this book will be that, and has been that for people.
Certainly. So to wrap up our discussion, Mr. Lighton, how can the lessons from your happiness equation help individuals to create a long-term happiness and fulfillment?
The first thing that it's gonna do is gonna, again, let them know that it's okay and good to want to create long-term happiness. The second thing is, it's gonna let them know that they should not be pursuing the emotion of happiness, because that can be very problematic, and it's gonna tell them the best ways to go about doing that. The things that have worked for me, the things that have worked for other people, and what research also says are great ways to pursue happiness.
Certainly. So, Mr. Leighton Campbell, thank you so much for sharing your empowering books to the world, and we are looking forward for more and more empowering books like this. So, can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Sure. The best place to find me is, my website, and that is yourhappinesseq.com. That's where you can find me. And then if you can also follow me on Instagram, and our handle is at yourhappinessEQ. Those two places.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Leighton Campbell, because if you support him, as I said, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Leighton, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.